How you guys doing? We're talking about Richmond in the Cup Series in this video. Now, as we're slowly getting through the season, and now that we're out of like the, BS races, Atlanta, Coda, we've really been off for 2 weeks since we've been to a real racetrack that I want to approach and everything. And then, after this one, we're back to Bristol Dirt. And so, like, it's really not until we get to, Martinsville and Dover and Kansas and Darlington, throughout the later month of April and into May that we really, look at stuff, or, we're at real racetracks where randomness doesn't necessarily have a gigantic impact on things. And so when we're at real tracks here, I'm personally trying to change my approach when I'm building lineups and stuff. So I'm sorry if this isn't necessarily like a picks video, but in general, I'm not really trying to approach races like that. And really in DFS in general, like, yes, there's people that I'm clearly going to like entering weeks, and I'm going to try and make sure that I take stances on those. Sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it doesn't. I felt like I stuck to my guns very well when it came to Coda and winning Kyle Larson, just because, I played one line, but I really like Kyle Larson. Just a shame he got kamikazed by like everybody in the field. I haven't seen somebody make contact with the vehicle like Bubba did, and not have brake failure in a while. Just an unlucky day for Larson. But in terms of like, who am I finding that I want to play? Who am I trying to focus on? Clearly, the people that I want to nail down specifically are the lap leaders. Okay, past that, I honestly don't really have like takeaways and stuff. People I want to target and stuff, and this will probably be more of a lineup construction video. Just that's how I'm really looking at stuff this year. I will say that I'm going to lean heavily on Phoenix, and if you haven't seen the Phoenix review video titled "Why I Watch like Live Scoring" or something like that, I'll post it in the comment section here. But watch that, as that'll be my main opinion. So I'm assuming that you've already watched that video if you're viewing this, and if you haven't, go ahead and watch that first. But when we're looking at Richmond specifically, now there's two different paths that we can go here, and Richmond is a place that I want to play, close to 20 lines and stuff, or at least certainly more than 10. And when we're looking at Richmond, as I said, I think there's two avenues that we can go with, okay? And one is let's try and nail all the lap leaders as possible. Now, duh, Brandon, that's what we want to do. But specifically targeting that leans to value plays coming through, and really leans to just trying to target, the bottom of the barrel salary. And when we look at optimal lineups, and when we look at how people have performed at Richmond before and in the past, and even short tracks in general, that's when we see, the punt plays come through sometimes to be optimal. And it's in a sense of, well, it's you're physically trying to get all, speaking optimally, it's getting all three lap leaders, possibly four, and anybody else who can click off fast laps or laps led in a race. And that can be due to a fact of somebody blowing a tire in a run and getting off sequence, having to pit to where they're technically a lap down, but since they're on new rubber, they're constantly getting the fast laps taken away from the leaders, so on and so forth. In those situations, you will see, value plays come through in the 4 and 5K ranges here and there. And so, yes, entering this week, when I have my 20 lines, or when I look at how I want to approach this in terms of a 20 lineup build or whatever, I imagine, and this is typically what I do, I'll have 3 to 4 lineups that play a close to men's salary guy, either a Yaley, a Cody Ware, a Ty Dillon. Shout out to Ty Dillon being men's salary. I never thought I'd see the day where that would be the case, but the man has had an absolute depressing start to the season. When we look at Ty Dillon's approach, when we look at his finishes, dude, the poor bastard, sure, 24th at Atlanta, but oh my gosh, DNFing at Coda, 30th at Phoenix, 34th at Las Vegas, 31st at Fontana, blowing the motor early at Daytona. The man has had a horrific season. Poor Ty Dillon, but that pricing is where it's at. A quick note really fast, because I've had some people ask, and I have to assume that it's because a lot of you don't understand how projections are made, in a sense, but a lot of these videos and stuff, and this may be how I'm changing my approaches or content stuff and things like that, but a lot of the value range and a lot of the value or chalk place differential plays comes from qualifying. That's just how it is, okay? We can't make projections until we have qualifying, okay? And I come from, really focusing on back in the day to where we have 2 practice sessions, a qualifying session, then final practice, post-qualifying or whatever, and we could really nail stuff down. I understand that it's been years at this point since we've had that. But when I build projections, I typically give, specifically in races like this, if you look at the salary, so like LaJoy, Burton, Dillon, Alfredo, Yaley, Cody Ware, Ty Dillon, your bottom portion of the salary from $5,400 down to, Ty Dillon at $47, depending on where they qualify, is going to have a gigantic impact on what their projection is, clearly. And what I mean by that is it's not necessarily the guys who qualify up top, but it's the guys who qualify as the slowest cars in the field. I typically bump up their projection to at least a 29th, a 28th, a 30th, to try and boost them or put them in, actually put them in a situation where the optimizer wants to use them or where they're somewhat viable to use. Because if you just project, Yaley, yes, he's going to go laps down for sure in this race. But if you just project him as like a 34th, you'll never, ever even get to him. And I'm not saying we're going to have gigantic wrecks and stuff, but you need to give him a somewhat projection that wants to force him into lineups, whether that be 15 points, whether that be 20 points. Typically that isn't even value there, or 5x return for them, but I think that's important. And so specifically at Richmond races and short track races, I typically don't project anybody to finish outside the top 30, just due to that's what I feel comfortable making projections at. And the reason I'm bringing this part up, or the reason I'm bringing this up, is because we always get into a situation of, do we want to play like a punt driver? Do we want to play a low-owned value, not a low-owned value, but like a Yaley, a Ware, and Austin Dillon, Anthony Alfredo, Gillen, do we want to do any of that stuff? And Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville, these are tracks, yeah, if that comes up in your runs, in your sims, whatever the case, roll it. Don't necessarily fight it. Don't go overboard on it. But I have absolutely no problem playing, guys that are at the very bottom, specifically at races like this where you have so many laps out there. And if we get a bunch of lap leaders and it becomes a situation where the optimal requires you to just go bottom of the barrel to get everybody else in your lineups, I'm perfectly fine with that. Now, the reason I'm tackling that approach first is because I think that is a very viable approach. The secondary approach that I want to really target following Phoenix in this race is to not chase place differential, due to the fact that I don't believe we're going to see much passing in these races. When you look at how Phoenix played out, and I think Phoenix, thank God we actually had green flag runs and we actually had cars spread out, go laps down. Yeah, sure, it ended in a stupid way, with all the green, white checkers and stuff. But for the most part, you didn't see passing. You didn't see people move through the field. You didn't see people fall through the field, okay? As I said, if you haven't checked out the video where I go over Phoenix, yet again, it'll be in the comment section below. Watch that video, because that was very much the same thing as it was last year. Outside of cautions, you're not passing in this car. The next-gen platform is just a bust, and we're never going back. To actually, have an incompetent car. Side note, if you guys want me to do another cruise control rant, I haven't done it because I lost my stupid PNG that has the font and everything on there. But I have been wanting to just rant about how the Xfinity car is far superior, and we've already done that before. But if you want to hear any rants, let me know, and I'll bring cruise control back. But when we look at Phoenix and when we look at last year's races, when it went green, you couldn't fucking pass at all. Okay, yeah, sure. The second Richmond race ran into a situation to where it got kind of funky. The top stores came from the mid and the back of the field. But look, the spring race last year, if you were fast in practice and you qualified up front, even if you weren't necessarily fast in practice, if you qualified up front, you maintained your track position. Yeah, sure. The race is then dictated by who short pits first, who stays out, and so on and so forth. But if you're making choices that dictate how a race will play out. And when you look at that race, it was Joe Gibbs really choosing how to lead and really call their race first off and foremost, which I think Joe Gibbs is going to probably run in that situation where it'll either be Hendrick or Joe Gibbs dictating who short pits first in this race. And that's also why I like Richmond a lot, because it's a track that goes green a lot of the times. That's just how it is. We don't have a lot of guys dumping each other. You don't really have side-by-side racing. You just kind of just run. You spread out, you run. It turns into a strategy type of race outside of the stage cautions, obviously. But if you're in a chance, or if you're in a role, in a situation where you can take control of the race under green, it's because you're running in the top 5, basically, top 7. If you're in the top 10 at any part in this race, you have a chance to lead laps. You have a chance to get fast laps, either due to pit strategy, either due to race strategy, whatever the case may be. Anybody in the top 10 this week, running the top 10, I honestly see as somebody who can lead laps. And it's also a situation where you can even be top 15, and be one of those idiots if they want to choose to do this, and you stay out like Eric Jones did at Phoenix and just stay out and hope for a yellow. That's still gaining fantasy points, and what do you do? What positions are there that allow you to be able to do that? Well, you're running at least top 15, because if you're a lap down, if you're running 30th on back, you're not in contention to get laps led or fast laps. That's just how it is, okay? So yet again, going back to the first strategy, the value plays are viable in a sense, just due to being the highest scoring guy, last guy in that builds a lineup in terms of like Gill and Alfredo Yaley, where Ty Dillon, whatever the case may be, even LaJoy, or actually not or. It's a situation where whoever scores the best there, due to either holding on to their position or due to attrition, can fit into the optimal line, or just running your position. I'm sorry, I'm going in circles there, but you know what I mean. So entering this race, entering Phoenix, who are guys that I like? Who are people that I want to focus on? Who are people that are, that are catching my attention? Well, to be honest, it's truly anybody that starts inside the top 15. The reason being, Keselowski held his own at Phoenix for a good portion of the field. He was the 8th fastest car, just due to the fact that he was able to stay up front for a majority of the race. Now, sure, yeah, he ran to trouble late in the day and ends up finishing 18th, but he ran top 10 all day long. When we look at where he was for a majority of the race, it was inside the top 10. Slight, laps inside the top 5. But if you're running in the top 10, you're there. You saw that Keselowski was optimal in a majority of that race. Same thing can be said about, Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell finishes 13th. He was the 14th best car in that race, but when you look at where he ran all day, Michael McDowell spent a majority of the time, and this was post the speeding penalty in the first green flag pit stop, he spent a majority of the day inside the top 15, just holding his position there. Yeah, sure, he speeds, and if you look back, you're going to see a majority of his time spent inside the top 25. But outside of that speeding penalty, McDowell didn't lose any spots, and he didn't necessarily have fast practice speeds at all. And even with the speeding penalty, just due to how wild this race went, he still ended up being, somewhat viable. When you look at Corey LaJoy, nowhere close to paying off his price tag, but was up there in a majority of lines, in a majority of high-scoring lineups, and he mainly just held his own. He mainly just held his position. When we look at LaJoy, he finishes 26, but there is a factor that, he ran laps inside the top 20, inside the top 15. He held his own. When we look back at where he actually finished, or actually, my bad, he finishes 26, and LaJoy ends up being, where you at, LaJoy? I'm actually quite shocked by how fast LaJoy has been this year. It's very, very interesting. I just went blank on what I'm looking for. Oh, LaJoy, truly not being horrible. He ran laps, inside the top I was going to say 25. I mean, he basically just ran 23rd all day. There'd be times where he would fall down to 30th and stuff, but due to the fact that he was able to just outscore people, it's pretty freaking nuts how 19 points from LaJoy, at $5,600 was enough to be there at the end of the day. He started 28th, finishes 26th, 19 points, and he was in some of the highest scoring lineups because those lineups required you to just get in the 5K range, and it de facto to him being one of the best 5K range plays in the lineups that use the majority of the salary. So anyway, very long-winded way to get here of who I like entering Phoenix, or who do I like entering Richmond. Clearly, anybody inside the top 15 is viable. Certainly, cheaper guys, if you see 7, 6, and even 5K guys starting there, I am not going to shy away from them. Especially if you start running those guys inside the top 20, not going to shy away from them. I'm going to be very hesitant and probably be very underweight on playing guys outside the top 20 in this race. Outside of super value plays, I don't want to pay up for place differential. I don't want to pay up for guys starting in the back. Even if you have a fantastic car, I think there's huge leverage to be had there, and Phoenix shows that is a very viable strategy to go and not chase guys in the back and not chase place differential. Outside of that, in terms of actual drivers I want to focus on, because this needs to be given with the blanket of if you're starting up front, I'm going to want to play you and have you in lineups. Drivers that I actually want to target, all the Hendrick guys, they are all in play. Josh Berry, even to his extent, like the fact that he was 2% owned, and the sumbitch really could have broken the slate. Like, he really, really could have broken the slate. I don't think enough people really focus on that. Let me see real fast. So, like, Josh Berry at Phoenix starts... I gotta find this, sorry. He starts, pretty sure it was his 17th. Let me just check real fast. And so here's the deal. Josh Berry starts 17th at Phoenix. He finishes 10th. He was $8,000. Scores 42 points. Just short of value. Actually, real quick, let me look at stuff. Actually, my bad. Actually scores right at value. The fact that he was $8,000 didn't let him get into the optimal lineup, just how the build was with needing Larson, needing Byron, paying up for other guys. He didn't fit in there necessarily based on his price tag. But the fact that he was 2% owned is a huge sin, and he was very close to absolutely blowing the doors off the slate, to be honest with you. He very easily could have, and really contended with a lot of chalk plays. I couldn't believe it. He started 17th. He held on to his position all day. When we look at how fast he was in general, Josh Berry was the 18th best car at Phoenix. Gains positions late on the restart, but he basically holds his position all day. Okay, if you look at where a lot of these guys started at Phoenix and where they ran all day, let's take a look at this really fast, because this is what I find very, very interesting. And so when we look at starting positions and we look at what their speed was in the race, I need to sort this by Phoenix here. Larson starts first, finishes fourth. He has the best car. William Byron is second. He starts second. He actually, what the heck is this? Oh, that's because Hammond started first. So I was like, what the heck am I looking at? Byron starts third, finishes second. Or Byron starts third, finishes first, but he has the second best car. Sorry, I'm thinking of a lot of things real fast. I'm going to go down on base. I'm going to focus on where they were in terms of how fast they were and then their finishing position. Harvick has the third best car, and Kevin Harvick starts 15th. Now, it took him a majority of the day to get there, but we would slowly see him cut through the field and be there, and by the end of the day, he ends up leading 36 laps. Why? Because he was in the top 5. He gains... You can't get the lead if you're not running in the top 5. But he was up there. Bell has the 4th best car. He starts 5th. basically holds his position. Reddick has the 5th best car. And I believe Reddick started in the back here. Let me go ahead and look really fast. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. Reddick starts 12th, ends up having the 5th best car. Blaney ends up starting 8th, has the 6th best car. Hamlin starts 2nd, has the 7th best car. Keselowski starts 4th, has the 8th best car. Briscoe, if I can find Briscoe starts 24th. He has 9th best car. Alex Bowman starts, and I could have just put this on the screen. Oh well, Alex Bowman starts 18th, has the 10th best car, and Kyle Busch starts 9th, has the 11th best car. Chastain starts. Where are you at, Chastain? I know I just saw you. He starts 6th, has the 12th best car. And then Buescher, who started mid-pack, I believe. Let me see. He started 21st. Buescher ends up having the 13th best car. McDowell starts 7th, has the 14th best car. Now, I understand that it kind of just sounds like I'm saying names and numbers and where they're at right now. But we're not seeing a really big discrepancy in terms of where they started, in terms of like truly like 7 positions, front or back. We could argue that are kind of huge here. But for the majority of these, where they started and what they ended up being in terms of their best car, it's roughly within 5 positions of each other. It's really not that big of a thing here. Like if you started, where you started is pretty much where you ran. For the most part. And it's just looking at Phoenix this year, looking at the races last year, it really makes me want to lean towards just playing guys up front. Another reason why I wouldn't necessarily do this is because Richmond is going to go green. We rarely have yellows at Richmond. And it's a situation where we will probably have 14 to 15 cars in the lead lap at some point in the race. And unless we get a yellow deep, not even deep, unless we get a yellow early in a run, no, it would have to force the leaders to come and pit. Depending on when a caution comes out, specifically in stage 3, you're either going to have a huge amount of cars taking the wave around, or you're just not going to have guys in the lead lap. And you know how you kind of isolate yourself, or you kind of force yourself into not losing DraftKings points? Well, it's stay in the lead lap. Especially in a situation where you have, 21st on back, a lap down. If you're running 20th, you're not going to fall back. You're not worried about getting passed. Your driver doesn't have to worry about being passed and stuff. And so how do you maintain a running position in this race? Or how do you maintain track position? Well, it starts with qualifying well. And the fact that you can't pass kind of keeps you there. And if you have a fast car, you're still going to be stuck in traffic. Richmond is truly, like, we're going to see guys around the high side, in the middle, and even the bottom in 3 and 4. But for the most part, it's one lane. You really can't pass. Dirty air is going to be huge. So even if you have a fast car, you're not going to necessarily be able to pass through the field. And if you get trapped a lap down, if people start getting trapped a lap down, then it isolates who you're racing with. Like if you play a guy starting 27th, and he's a lap down, and leader is lapped all the way up to 22nd, well, even if he has a long-run car, even if he is finding something late in the race, well, he can only go up to 21st because everybody else is a lap ahead of him, And in terms of DraftKings points, that is huge. If you end up having a guy who's fast, but he's a lap down and he gets stuck running, 23rd, 21st, even 19th or something, you're capped. You can't get any more points, and then it just throws itself to whoever's on the lead lap, and so just entering the Cup Series race, it's not about being lazy, and it's not about not having picks, because clearly you're going to have guys that you like either based on research or practice speed or whatever, but I really do believe that if you're in the top 15, you should have a way bigger priority in your player pool than, other people. That's just how it is, and Phoenix showed that was a viable way. If you played, and yet again, watch that video, I can't tell you how many, in my opinion, and not necessarily ugly lines, they're fantastic lines. Like, you got the nuts to play, fucking Michael McDowell again. Corey LaJoie projected not even score value. Like, I think value, at least for this race, is a bit overrated. You should absolutely prioritize starting position and track position in this race. I think that's just going to be huge. And so that's how I want to build. I will not be shocked come Sunday when a majority of my lines, and I'm going to try and make it this way to where I have at least 4, if not 5 of my drivers starting inside the top 17. That's kind of just how I want to focus on it, And it's probably going to be a situation where it's going to be those guys up there, and then might even be all 6 inside the top 17 if I can do it on salary and stuff. Certainly in the top 20. And the only reason I would probably play anybody in the back of the field is probably if you qualify poor, and that would probably be like a Cody Ware, a BJ McLeod or something, a Ty Dillon, whatever the case may be. Like even Ty Dillon, I saw Ty Dillon be in some lineups at Phoenix as well, because he started 35th. If you compare Ty Dillon and LaJoy, as I said, LaJoy was in quite a few high-scoring lineups at Phoenix late in that race. LaJoy scores 19 points. He starts 28th. He finishes 26th, gets 19 points. Austin Dillon in that same race starts 35th, finishes 30th, scores 17 points. Both these guys were in the 5K ranges. They didn't hit value. It was just if you needed to dip down there because you had guys right up front, it either went to Ty Dillon, it went to Corey LaJoy. I think the worst thing we could really do this year is really be caught up on trying to hit value, and it's really something that I've been working on, that I'm trying to work on, and that I've really put into my approach of just building lines, not only for this but for F1 and everything like that. And it's been, I'm way more. I think I'm finding more success when I view things certainly way more from a line of construction versus putting a huge amount of my time, which I still do. Like I just went over the lap by lap data from Phoenix just before this to get a refresher on stuff. But man, I don't know. I think part of me the last few years I've been so deep in the weeds on stuff. I think taking a step back has really helped, and looking at races from a different point of view. I really haven't approached races like this, and if I keep doing the same thing as I've been doing the last years, yeah, sure, we've had good days, we have bad days, but like I want to do a different approach, see if things can be different. And so I think Richmond's a very important race to really target starting position and guys holding those positions all day. I know it's a scary thing to look at, but I think a lot of these races are going to start leaning more and more to that. Now, if we get fucking yellows, it's all over. That strategy is kind of out the window, or that lineup strategy is kind of out the window. But I think spring race at Richmond nearly always leads to a green race, and that's just kind of what I want to lean into. So I will see you guys on Sunday. If you want to support me, if you like any of the stuff I do, consider joining the Patreon. But outside of that, I'll see you guys Sunday for the live shows.